All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I'm James Orr, and I try to start around 6 o'clock. Honor your time. People get here on time. We do appreciate that. So I'm going to get started. People that are straggling in late, they can kind of get caught up. We'll do a couple things first. Upcoming classes. Royce is going to power up the mic there. So next week, we have When Real Estate Investing Goes Horribly Wrong. It's a class that Brian's going to teach, and I'm going to make snarky comments from the side gallery. While
that was not my understanding. I thought you were teaching and I was making snarky comments.
I do not think so. This is your class.
It's my class.
This is your topic.
This is Daryl's class.
Oh, well, then Daryl's teaching it, and we're going to both make snarky comments.
Perfect. We'll let him know.
So what is that one about, actually?
All the times that real estate goes wrong, and we don't really talk about it a lot, but it definitely happens, even if it's stuff that's small. Sometimes you buy a property, it looks great, and things don't go your way. So I know of at least a couple case studies that I'll kind of cruise through in that, and then some other stuff I'm sure we'll talk about tonight after class to figure out other things to talk about in that class.
Like even when you do your best deal analysis and you think a property is going to have 10% cash on cash return or something like that, sometimes you have significant unexpected maintenance come up, or the property ends up needing some,
roofs,
like capital expenses of some type or something like that. I don't know, something.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's infested with cockroaches.
Or sewer lines, or
Or
trees that are encroaching on the property, or things like that. So that's one example of some of these things that are going wrong. So, all right, so that's going to be a really awesome class. It'll scare everybody who's on the fence, who doesn't know if they want to invest away. So that's good. So you may not want to come to that class or skip it if you want to. Yeah. Although the EV class last week, how many people came to the EV class, Brian's poker class last week? So that was kind of, what's that? You were here for that? So that was an interesting way to look at it, right? Basically taking bets, and you're not going to win every bet. And I think that's the part of what Royce said actually during his interview was, the idea that, you won't know if you were successful at your investing strategy until many years later, but you're willing to take bets. And the other thing he said, which was pretty interesting, is, make sure you don't, if you have a loss on a deal or two, that you're not out of the game completely, that you just take a loss, move on, and you kind of reinvest and do what you need to do. So it's going to be good. And then we've never taught this class before. I would say, I don't know the percentage, but maybe a third of our deals are probably new construction at this point. Would you say that, Tam? Maybe like a third of all the properties clients buy are brand new houses. And so we kind of specialize in some weird way with people that are buying new houses. So we're going to do a special class on buying new houses as investments and for nomads. People that are going to move into the property, live there for a year or two, and then move out and convert it to a rental. So we'll have a whole special class on how new construction differs. We'll go over some numbers and stats. I'll show you where the new construction neighborhoods are. I'll talk about some of the special resources we have for new construction. It's going to be a whole bunch of really good things in that. So that's going to be on September 19th. And then by popular demand, it started off as a joke, like, who wants to kind of hear about Brian's Amazon business, but apparently a lot of people want to hear about Brian's Amazon business. So we've converted it to a class to teach at NCRAG for how to save or earn down payments faster. It's going to be Get Your Side Hustle On, AKA the Amazon class. And Brian, you want to comment about what's going to be included in that?
It's going to be amazing.
It is going to be amazing. That's true.
And we're going to do a workout before class, because that was someone said that they wanted a rogue workout.
This is not true. The workout will be outside in that little
from 5:30 to 6.
Yeah. Anyone who wants to show up early, I will not be there for that.
So this class is basically going to be different side hustles, mostly focused around e-commerce businesses online. As many of you know, I run an Amazon business. So does Royce. So do several other people that have started them in this room probably now. And so we're going to talk about how you can start one, what that might look like, kind of get into some of the details of it, and that'll be the class pretty much.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's going to be really good. So thank you for doing that. And then for those of you that don't know, how many people in here knew that I ran the largest wholesaling company in the United States? We were wholesaling in 280 markets. Okay, so like four people. So people ask me all the time, they go to a late night seminar, or they pay $300 for the weekend thing from, insert name of company that charges you a lot of money for classes. And they all say, get started with wholesaling. Go to your market, go to your local investor club. And so we get a lot of people that go to those things. They come here because they're local. The guy they paid $300 or $3,000 or $30,000 to says, come find your local investor club and get started in wholesaling. So for the longest time, our market's been like insanely hot, and it's been incredibly difficult to wholesale deals. When you find the deal, it's super easy to get rid of. But it's been finding investor-grade deals that's been a real challenge to do. And so we haven't really taught a lot of classes on wholesaling. Back in 2003 and 2004, I do a bunch of classes on wholesaling because the wholesaling stuff was a strategy that worked back then. You could actually do it. And I think we're starting to get to the point where our market is opening up a little bit, where the people that are willing to be, early adopters and put in the effort up front and spend the money on marketing and find deals are going to be able to start wholesaling some properties. And so I'm doing a 2-part series on wholesaling. What I'll basically do is the last big wholesaling class I did a full day, 8-hour seminar on wholesaling. I will probably take like the two 2-hour segments that are most important for that class, and I'll reference some other stuff that we already have, because I don't have to teach you deal analysis again. You guys have like 10 classes on deal analysis on the recordings. But I'll teach you a bunch of different stuff about wholesaling over 2 different weeks. So it'll be October 3rd is part 1, and then October 10th will be part 2. I would encourage you, if you're interested in wholesaling, you don't skip one of them. You definitely want to come to both if you're going to do wholesaling. So the wholesaler, how many wholesalers are in the room? How many people want to do wholesaling? So just like 2 people maybe? Oh, Royce wants to wholesale. So there's going to be some class on that. It's going to be some pretty good stuff. So I'll give you some inside secrets to wholesaling, and then I'll reference some of the materials you have access to as to where to go in order to get more information on that. Okay? So for those that keep asking for wholesaling, this is it. This is the time. So hopefully people will come to that. Any questions on upcoming classes? I am deliberately trying to slow down for you tonight. So normally I get up here and for 2 hours I just go like full speed. So I'm trying to slow down. I'm sitting down to try to slow that down and make it available. So let's do introductions. Who are you? And then what is your definition of a deal? Because tonight's class is Deal Alchemy. How to make deals in a dealless market? I don't even know what that's called. Something like that. How to make deals in a dealless market. So if this is a dealless market, what is a deal for you? It's kind of the question for tonight. So Royce, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. I'm Royce. I am a long-term buy and hold real estate investor here in Northern Colorado. What's my definition of a deal?
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
Does it make money?
Yeah.
Okay, that seems fair. This is going to be interesting.
What's a deal?
Yes. What is a deal, Brian?
I'm Brian Williams, also a long-term buy and hold investor in Northern Colorado. My definition of a deal is probably depending on what I'm actually looking for at what point in my real estate investing career.
I think that's fair.
And so in the beginning, it was very much cash flow, but there are times when you are willing to take EV speculation bets, and there are times when you are willing to just invest knowing that you're going to build your wealth from that property, as opposed to just having to have cash flow. So I think it depends on where you're at and what you're looking for. There is no one definition for a deal. Your definition should not be to lose money. That is the one not definition that you should have.
Fair enough. Although for tonight, the answer should not be, yeah, it depends on what your goals are. It should be for you, what's a deal? So, like what is a deal for you?
So what's a deal for me? I think something that is a decent property that doesn't need a lot of fix-up, that makes a decent amount of cash flow in a year, or is a discounted purchase price so that I can either resell it and make a lump sum cash profit, or hold on to it longer term until the rents come up and make it a profitable deal.
So the short version of that is either cash flow or discount.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Welcome.
You got it.
My name is Carrie. I'm new to the area. I'm a licensed realtor working in property management for All County, just down the street. I think a deal is something sustainable that everybody can walk away with feeling like they got something out of it. Otherwise, things that are imbalanced like that, people get taken advantage of, and then you're not doing business down the road. So,
awesome. Thanks. Welcome.
I'm James. Starting off with buy and hold right now. A deal for me is a distressed property that I can get at a discount and utilize my construction background to increase value on my own with my own two hands.
So it has to be a discounted property that needs work so that you can actually add value that way.
Not necessarily. If it's zoned properly and I could turn a single family into a duplex and just basically increase the value, either the cash flow or increase the equity by doing manual labor myself.
Okay, so it has to be a manual labor thing.
For me, that's what I'm looking for right now.
And are you doing the work yourself?
Yeah.
Okay, you should listen to Asset Protection class.
Hi. I'm Doug. Recently retired, just starting, total newbie. Been trying to learn as much as I can for the past few years, but believe I've got an eye on a couple of places that are way out northeast
Okay.
in the state, and would really appreciate making some contacts with some key people, contractors. I have a line on a couple of folks that are private money or hard money lenders, that sort of thing, but just putting a deal together and getting it to work
So what's
within
a
the
deal
next.
for you?
Pardon me?
What's a deal for you?
A deal for me is a successful wholesale on a property, or one that I can fix and flip in 30 days or less here.
Okay, so you're primarily wholesaling, so it sounds like. So any deal that an investor would take. So listen really carefully to what other people consider deals so that you know what a wholesale deal looks like to them.
Okay.
Right? Awesome, thanks, welcome.
Hi, I'm Donna, and my definition of a deal is I'm going to be long-term buy and hold. Getting within my 10-year of retiring from being an accountant for many years, making people 10 times what I should have made myself. So I just want to have a little bit more income coming in, so I don't have to worry so much when I'm retired.
So is it cash flow then?
It's cash flow.
Okay.
And building a portfolio that makes sense. You
Okay.
know? So I don't
Awesome.
like a lot of repairs. I just, like something what you helped me with this last year was
Okay.
perfect.
Awesome, thank you, welcome.
Hi, I'm Marina. Right now, I'm a realtor, fairly new. Guess my definition of a deal right now is finding a property for a client and that they're satisfied with, and closing that deal and making money off of it.
Awesome.
Hoping to expand on that.
Awesome, thanks, welcome.
Hi, my name is Gretchen. I guess I would be a long-term buy and hold investor.
Okay.
The last two houses I've lived in have increased enormously, and I've made money that way, but I didn't really plan on doing it that way.
Right.
But what I would like, I think a deal for me is someplace where people don't live. I'm interested in things where people would, like rental units where they store things, or where people store RVs.
Okay, like storage
Something-
units and things like
Yeah,
that?
places like that where you don't have to replace refrigerators and stuff like that.
Okay, awesome, thanks, welcome.
Hi, my name's Bob, and for me, my definition of a deal would be one that cash flows.
Okay. So let me just kind of use you as the guinea pig because you're a nice guy.
Okay.
So, $300,000 property, rents for $1,000 a month. If you put 20% down, it wouldn't cash flow. If you put 100% down, it would cash flow. Is that acceptable to you?
So I would say I would have to have a cap rate in that if I bought it at $300,000, that would return to me 6%.
So cap rate of 6%.
Yeah, cap rate
And so
of
a cap
6%.
rate for people that don't know is your cash on cash return. If you bought it all cash, you did not get a loan. Okay, so that's what cap rate is. So you really would need to get a 6% return on your money for buying it free and clear.
Yeah, for me that would, and I understand that those deals probably are far and few between.
Okay.
But there is downside risk. Maybe you don't get the appreciation that you think you get.
Especially if you go in another market to find those, sure. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Welcome.
My name's Barbie, and I'm going to say the same thing, but 5% for me.
5% cap rate? Anyone want 4? We're bidding down now. Anybody want 4% cap rate? All right.
We'll arm wrestle.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like a race to the bottom, and this is the challenge in our market, right? Someone says, hey, I need 4% cap rate, and someone else said, hey, I'll take 3, and they bid it up, and someone says, I'll take 2, and they bid it up, and they take 1, and next thing you know, we're at 0% cash on cash for 20% down in our marketplace. So that's how you get there.
My name's Mike. This is a good question because it's something we're kind of working on right now and defining it. In the past, if it was just a straight investment property, I was looking for 15% cash on cash and then the ability to break even in 5 years.
The ability to break even in what way?
Like to get to where everything I'd put into it, I'd made back in 5 years.
Okay, so get all your money back in 5 years.
All my money back in 5 years. Now I'm getting more to the point where I'm looking more to try to reduce risk, and so I would certainly bend those rules if I felt like there was a good chance for appreciation. And if it's a 1031 exchange, I look at it a lot differently. If I'm swapping one for the other, I fudge the numbers quite a bit there. If it's a hard money loan, I'm just wanting to get 10 or 11% and around 70% loan to value.
10 or 11% of what?
Just straight interest. Just
oh, like you're loaning the money?
Correct.
Okay.
And then I'm just getting into some notes, and so I'm still trying to define like what my threshold there is for yield.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks.
My name is Emily, and a deal for me is something that's of benefit to all the parties involved.
Okay, awesome.
My name's Tammy, and I would say today something break even or better cash flow that's going to long-term appreciate and give a return.
So break even or better cash flow with what percentage down? Half?
20% or more.
So half. I can put half down if it's
No.
break even or better, we're good?
We can talk the details later.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Denise, long-term buy and hold investor in Northern Colorado. Definition of a deal, 25% down, break-even cash flow. I'm happy with that.
Okay.
But I think mainly I want a quality property in a great location.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Nick. I'm still learning what exactly is a good deal and what's not a good deal. So.
Awesome. Thanks. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Luca. I have no idea what a deal is.
Do you sleep with the fishes?
I'm looking for an apartment on the second floor, so.
That's awesome. I'm sure you've never heard that before, right?
I don't know what you guys are talking about. Anyway, I'm just trying to figure out if real estate is the right place, because I got other options.
Awesome. Thanks.
My name's Joe. We're looking for apartments, so our definition of a deal is like a 3 to 5 year cash flow with 15, maybe 20% appreciation in that frame.
So 15 to 20% appreciation over a 3 to 5 year period. And so what about cash flow during that time on the apartment?
Definitely.
Like what? Like what's the number? I mean, because at least what? I'm sorry?
At least 10%.
10% cash on cash return? Okay. Are you looking only in our Northern Colorado market, or are you looking at other markets?
No.
Okay, yeah, because it's really hard to
Several
find that in our
markets,
markets.
Yeah, that's tough up here.
Yeah.
When you only sell one set of apartments in a year.
Right. There's very few of them, and the ones that, at least the ones I'm seeing numbers on, are nowhere near that.
Yeah, and that one over here off Ziegler is huge. A little bigger than we can probably take down or wherever it's at.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks.
So what he said.
Okay, awesome. That works.
Although I will say, Donna, you and I are in the same boat exactly. We're both accountants. I want to retire.
Yeah.
So that's why we're looking for apartments.
Totally.
But we are looking all over.
Awesome.
Still can't find deals, though.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Cash flow.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Kevin, and I'm basically Casey's chauffeur.
Okay.
So
Does he have his driver's license? Okay. At least you're a millennial that has your driver's license, because mine just got his today, and he's 22 years old. That's crazy, but yes.
So I'm here to observe and learn.
Awesome. Cool. Welcome. Thanks.
I'm Casey. I consider a deal a property that you can either purchase at a discount or a property that you can add value to, whether it be through square footage or whatever other creative ideas you come up with.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Elaine. Haven't been here in a while. Let me see. Who am I? We bought half a dozen properties about 10 years ago, and they've probably doubled in price right now.
Sure.
So I think that's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. Did you plan for that? Did you say, I'm buying these because they're going to double in value in the last 10 years?
Oh, absolutely. No.
Yeah.
No. How am I?
Were they cash flowing when you bought them?
Pretty much. Yeah. Well, I got them at auction.
Okay.
I bid on them.
Okay.
On one.
Did you finance them after you bought them, or did you use cash
No.
and kept them in cash?
Nope.
Just kept them in cash? Okay, so they cash flow when you bought them.
Yep. I guess a deal, or the other definition of a deal would be if I can get something for under market value,
Sure.
which I did do buying them at auction.
Right.
And I'd do that again, waiting for about 2 more years for that price to drop.
So you think it's going to be in 2 years?
I think the market's cyclical, and I think it's on the down.
There's no doubt it's cyclical, but it is not a regular cycle.
Why is that?
Just look at the charts. It's not regular. It's an irregular cycle. So
Yeah.
it goes during certain periods it goes up and certain periods it goes down.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's cyclical in that nature, but it is not every 7 years or every 11 years or whatever it is, especially in our local market. We have not seen it to be regular.
Really? I've seen a lot more houses come on the market for sale right now.
I think we're starting to see an increase in inventory. I think
I've
that's
seen
true.
a lot of price drop as well in those houses. that
When
come on the
people are
market.
starting too high, they are price dropping.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And I hadn't seen that before, so that's why I think it's maybe on the downside right now.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm no expert, but it's just what I've observed.
in the market stats class, we talked about this a little bit. We're seeing early on signs that the market is softening, but we had not seen, it's not going to amplify your voice. It's basically just, it's starting to soften a little bit, but in the big picture, it is still really hot. It's just not scorching insanely 25 offers on a property hot. It is, sometimes we're seeing 2 or 3 offers. What's the last property we had that had multiple offers? Yeah, like, was it? Yeah, like 5. So it's not like it's soft. I mean, that is not a softening market where you're going to start seeing huge discounts. We saw 5 offers on the last one. Yeah, sure, absolutely. And here's the interesting thing about that. So I'm getting off tangent here a little bit, but imagine for a second, it does take 2 more years. But before 2 more years, the market continues to go up 8% a year. And so it's gone up 16% in the next 2 years. And then let's say you get 10% discount. You would have been better off buying today. So that's the hard part about our market is unless you know how to time it, and no one knows. I mean, no one knows and can predict when the market's going to turn. So if it goes up 8% for the next 2 years and you get a 10% discount, finally, wow, it looks great because you got a 10% discount. Yeah, so no one knows. Could be this year. Could be this next month. No one knows. Absolutely.
I'm JB Combs. I've been an agent for 13 years or so. I have a couple buy and holds. The deals I tend towards seem to be deals that nobody else is willing to take on. So most
Clients, do you want any of these? No. Okay, well, I guess I'll take it then.
That's kind of the way it worked out. So
Sure.
I've been in this group a couple times, but I'm the one that ended up with a buy and hold in Longmont that had a hoarder and everybody was scared of it.
Yeah.
So I ended up getting it because the hoarder ran people off. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. Awesome, thanks.
He still lives there and pays rent.
Yeah.
Paid 35, check is run up from 650 to 1,000 and he's paid.
There you go. It's a lot cheaper than moving all that stuff out, that's for sure.
I'm Nick. I'm a long-term buy and hold investor, and I guess like Brian was saying, your definition of a deal is probably going to change based on the market environment. 4 years ago you could do 10% cash on cash. Now, like Denise is saying, you can do 0 and 25% down. I don't know that that's a deal, but that's the condition. So
Yeah, I think that's true.
Anyway.
Awesome, welcome.
I'm Caroline. I have a buy and hold in another state, and I am still learning this market. But I think that a deal would be, of course, to buy low and sell high, but to learn to buy at auction and also to do maybe some fix and flips.
Okay. What do you need to see in a fix and flip, profit-wise?
I'd be happy with 6%.
6% on a fix and flip?
Yep.
Why not just get your real estate license? You don't have to fix and flip anything. Make 6%.
True.
Doug?
Hi, I'm Doug. My definition of a deal is, I don't know, fully tenanted triplex, 20% below market value.
In Old Town Fort Collins on a 4-acre
lot.
lot.
There you go. If I had enough of those, yeah.
No, it would not.
I don't think they exist, but you got to aim high.
It is the island. That was a good class. We should do that class again.
I'm Kevin, and I'm actually looking to buy my first Nomad property.
Awesome.
So, if I could find a long-term buy and hold that breaks even cash flow right now, that would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, all right, awesome. I'll show you one tonight.
I'm Dan Smith, and I'm here to learn what a deal is.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Me too. All right, did we miss anybody? Anyone sneak in after the fact? Oh, Allison, do you want to do your intro, Mike? Thank you. Yep, Allison would like to tell us what a deal is.
She's going to drop knowledge.
She's going to drop mad skills.
I'm Allison, and honestly, I don't know what my definition of a deal would be since I don't have a whole lot of experience with anything yet.
Fair enough. Awesome. Welcome. Thank you. All right, so a couple things. We just got the new podcast image up. So I did a coming soon for the image. We have a new podcast image. So if you're on the podcast and you download it, you'll see a new image of Brian and James on there. I look like I have an abnormally large head, which is fine. I'm totally okay with it. There are 125 of these class recordings up there.
Did you take those pictures together, or did you just stitch them?
No, Tammy literally took that picture live. She didn't tell us to move. She's just like, oh, James's head is like taking up 50% of the screen. Brian's taking up 20%.
The best part of the picture is that you don't know where the camera is
I'm
on
like looking
Tammy's
over here.
phone. Yeah, you're like looking at the bottom of the phone.
Oh, yeah. I don't have it. I'll show it next week as soon as I get it. So there's 125 recordings up there. You guys are welcome to access it. If you go to podcast.ncraig, that's the link for iTunes. And if you want to go access it on Spotify or Stitcher or TuneIn, go see Holly's email. Is there anyone not getting the emails to find out about classes? Otherwise, how did you get here today? But Holly should be sending you emails that say, come to class. And at the bottom of them, I think on every single one, she's got the links to the other ones. So if you can't access it, come talk to me or email Holly or something. It is finally here. So you've been hearing about it forever. But the Nomad Calculator 3, that's the old name. The new name is called realestatefinancialplanner.com. Someone was really, really nice and purchased me that domain name, which was not cheap. So thank you for doing that, whoever did it. And it is available at realestatefinancialplanner.com. All of you guys get access to a free account. You can go in there. You can model your own portfolio. It allows you to enter in properties you're thinking about buying, bank accounts you have, not like account numbers, but like I have this much money and I'm putting this much money in it. And you can model how it performs. Basically, it does simulations for your investing strategy and allows you to model all sorts of really crazy stuff. So it is officially launched. I am in the process of moving it from one server to another, so it may go down temporarily here in the next week or so. But then after that, I'll be adding additional features and cleaning some stuff up. It has no help files as of right now because I have yet to add all those. It is that early on. But you guys are welcome to use those and play with it. It is pretty amazing stuff. I've been really enjoying my time with it. So, all right, so tonight, Deal Alchemy, how to create deals in a dealless market. I'm James Orr. So Alchemy is a seemingly magical process. This is a formal definition. A seemingly magical process of transformation, creation, or combination. And when I get into the meat of the class tonight, you'll see tonight was really about manipulating the return on investment quadrant. How do you move returns from appreciation to other areas of the quadrant, like cash flow? Or how do you take debt pay down and move that return to cash flow? Or vice versa. How do you take cash flow and say, I really want to get my return to debt pay down, and how do I accomplish that? And so I will show you tonight how that actually works. But what I really wanted to do before we got too far into this is ask you guys, is this really a dealless market? Is this a market that does not have deals? Because the premise of the class is, how do you make deals in a dealless market? And so I want to challenge our assumption up front with our title. And I'll say, what is a typical return we're seeing on properties in our market right now? Who wants to guess? I'm going to go through two examples. So I'll show you the calculations. But what do you think the return on investments in our current marketplace are right now? Go ahead and just call them out.
Overall ROI?
Yeah, overall ROI, because I think that's how you measure a deal. So what's the return on investment in our current marketplace right now?
20 to 25%?
20 to 25. 30 to 40. Anyone else want to name stuff? 0. Anyone else? 4%. Okay. So there's a wide range of what people believe, and there's a very large number of people that are really afraid to answer me right now because I think they're afraid they're going to put the wrong answer. And Royce is the one that said 0 in case anyone was wondering. So I just called him out for doing 0, which they're not all 0. All right, so 2 examples I'm going to go over here tonight. Number one is I'm going to go over a new construction purchase in Severance. And I've got some really good numbers on this because we bought one, and I've got a bunch of clients that have bought one. And then we're going to go over a resale property in Evans, what I consider to be better than average cash flow property in our current market right now. And as of the time I made this presentation, which was a couple days ago, that property was still for sale. And the new construction one, you could still buy those. So resale property in Evans, you could probably still buy it as of right now. So if you like the numbers on it, feel free. Okay, so this is the return on investment quadrant. A lot of people that have come to any type of deal analysis class, you've seen me present it this way before. And I break down the 4 areas of return that we see when we invest in real estate. And I'm going to go over a lot of different examples of this tonight. I may actually write a book on this particular idea, this kind of like return on investment quadrant, because we teach so many classes on it. There's enough stuff to fill a book. And by the way, it's trademarked for Brian. So the 4 different areas I'm going to go into detail are appreciation, cash flow, debt pay down, and then the tax benefits like depreciation. So appreciation. What is appreciation? Class.
Increase in property value over time.
Yeah, property values go up over time. Now, can property values go down? Yes. What does that mean you have? Negative appreciation, okay? So property values tend, over a very long period of time, they tend to go up in value, but you can have negative appreciation in short term. Is appreciation guaranteed? Is it fixed in? Is it locked? What is it?
Speculation.
It's speculative, right? I mean, you don't know what's going to happen with appreciation. You could buy a property thinking the market's going to go up, and as Elaine said, you know, she's waiting for the market to drop. So we could buy it today, plugging in a number of 3% or 5% or 10%, which I don't recommend you do, but let's say you did 3%, and then Elaine's prediction comes true, and it goes down 10%. Could that happen? Sure, it's all speculative. Case Shiller, there's 2 economists, someone Case and someone Schiller, that actually were with, I think they were with Yale. And they went back and they looked at historical data over the entire United States. And they looked at house over house sale. So instead of just saying, you know, the overall median price per square foot in this market is this, and the median price per square foot a year later is this, and taking the difference of them, they said, okay, this one house sold 4 years ago for this amount. It sold 4 years later for this price. Let's figure out what the appreciation is for each house individually and find out what the appreciation is for the entire area. And then they did the entire country. And they found out that over a 100-year-plus period, the appreciation rate of the entire real estate market nationwide is about 3%. Okay? They figured out that inflation over that same period was about 3.1. It's either 3 or 3.1. They're either reversed or the same, but they're both around 3.1. Okay? So what they really proved is that real estate values tend to keep pace with inflation. And one of the arguments they make for not investing in real estate is if you go buy a piece of real estate for all cash, and it just keeps pace with inflation, then you're really not gaining any ground. That if you buy a $100,000 property and 5 years later it's gone up 3% a year, that really that property has just kept pace with inflation. You haven't lost any money, but you haven't gained anything. What's wrong with that assumption? You're getting rents, that's one reason, but what's the other, and what's the other real difference between that? Yes, you're leveraged in most cases. In most cases, you're not coming in and paying $100,000 cash to buy this property. You're putting 20% down. And if you're putting 20% down on a property and the property value goes up 3%, what is your return on your down payment?
15%.
15%, because it's leveraged by a factor of 5. If you're putting down 1/5, then you're getting 5 times that in return, okay? So you get 3% return over a very long period of time, and it could go up and down, right? Next year it could be up 8. Next year it could be down 10. We don't know. But over a long period of time, tends to be about 3% a year. And so if you're doing that and putting 20% down, it's going to be about a 15% return in most cases, okay? So recently we've seen unsustainable numbers. How many people come to my stats class? What did we see like crazy appreciation numbers last couple of years? What do you think? Like what was in the ballpark?
6 to 7.
6, 7, depending on who it is, 8%, depending on how you measure it. If you're measuring just price per square foot or you're measuring average price or median price, it depends on how you measure it, but 6, 7, 8 has not been unnatural, uncommon in our marketplace, which is crazy and it's unsustainable. Okay? Anyone who tells you, let's assume the market just goes up 6% a year, I don't think that's a sustainable thing to think about. Okay? We might see that, or we might see 10% down next year and then give some of it back or whatever. Who knows? So depending on how you measure it, it's been the 8% per year range. We may continue or we may give something back. We talked about that with Elaine. Okay, so that's appreciation. Anyone have any questions on the appreciation quadrant of the return on investment quadrants? No questions. Awesome.
Question.
Yes, question.
Well, so
oh, wait. We need mic. Hold on 1 second, Luca. Let's get the mic over there.
So you talked about the 20% down rule, to get to 15%, right?
A 20% down payment.
The down payment.
Yeah.
That's assuming that your interest rate on your loan is less than the 3%, right?
It's going to be covered under other areas, but the appreciation itself is like one part of the return. When you actually take into account the cash flow portion, which we're going to get to next, it actually is impacted by your interest rate in your loan. Absolutely. So you could have a negative return there, could be negative cash flow, but the appreciation return is 15. Yep, totally. Okay, so cash flow. Is cash flow guaranteed, fixed, always going to be the same? Nick, what do you think? Is cash flow going to be the same? No. It is definitely not going to be the same all the time. Okay? So sometimes we think we're going to buy a property and it's going to have a 10% cash on cash return, and something unexpected happens. You need a new sewer line. You need a new roof. You need to remove a tree. There's all sorts of things that could happen. So it is speculative. And even before we buy, sometimes we're guessing as to what the rent's going to be, right? We go look at a property. We're like, so James, you say, James, what do you think rent's going to be? I'm like, I don't know, $1,200 a month is my best guess. And you go and rent it after the fact and you get 15. Or unfortunately, you might get 1,100, right? Something could happen to the market between when you go under contract and when it comes out. Or I could be highballing you and I could think that it's really 12 and it's really 11. Or I could think it's 12 and it's 19, which has happened with Brian all the time. I'll go on the property and I'll say, he says, what do you think this would rent for? I say 1,200. He's like, you're crazy. It's 1,900. Right?
Not quite that far apart.
It's pretty close. Okay. So it's totally speculative. It is not guaranteed in any way. It is harder to get better than 0% in northern Colorado with 20% down payment or less. So if you're going to go buy a property, you're going to put 20% down in our marketplace here. It is really difficult. The overwhelming majority of the properties you look at are not going to have positive cash flow in our marketplace. Okay? There are some exceptions, but that's the overall rule. You can improve the return you get by putting more down, right? If you went and you bought a property, the kind of joke I was running here tonight is, if you want cash flow, and you put 100% down, the property is probably going to have positive cash flow. If you put 100% of the purchase price down, don't get a loan. Okay? Exactly. The less you put down, though, the more likely you are to have negative cash flow. And kind of our measuring stick for most of the time we do deal analysis is 20% down. That's usually our yardstick. Some investors are opting to put 25% down to get an improved interest rate and to borrow less to improve their cash flow. Okay? So we're seeing that. It also improves interest rate and lower loan balance, so you get two benefits of doing that, lower interest rate and the lower amount you're borrowing, which both of those improve cash flow. And then all of the stuff, how many people came to Cash Flow Explosion, that class? All the stuff we talked about in that class still applies. So you can go in there and find out all the different ways to improve your cash flow on a property, and those still apply here. Okay? Any question on cash flow? Awesome. Next one, debt pay down. Debt pay down is the amount of money you get when you make your monthly payment to the bank. A certain amount of it goes toward principal, a certain amount of it goes toward interest. The amount that goes toward principal that pays off your loan, that is what we're talking about the return from debt pay down. A certain part of your payment gets applied to reducing your loan balance, and if you take that amount, the amount that gets applied to reducing your loan balance, you divide it by the amount you invested, that's going to give you the percentage return you're getting from paying down your loan. And if your tenant is paying your loan down, really it's actually being paid for by your tenant. Does that make sense? So, if you actually make your monthly payments, you get that return. It is not market dependent. Does it matter if the market goes up 20% next year, what you're going to get in debt pay down? No. Does it matter if the market goes down 20% next year? It does not. If you make those monthly payments, you get that return. Now, the market going up or down 20% is going to be affected in appreciation. So you're going to see that return there. But as far as your return from debt pay down goes, it is actually fixed. Okay? And so basically, your debt pay down is as close to guaranteed as you can get without being guaranteed, because as long as you make those payments contractually with your lender, you're getting this return. Okay? It varies depending on the length of the loan. So the return you get from paying down a loan over 15 years is greater than the return you get from paying down a loan over 30 years. Does that make sense to everybody? The return you get from debt pay down when you make it over a 15-year period, a 15-year loan, is greater than the return you get when you pay down a loan over 30 years. Okay? In the short term, your return does vary by interest rate. So if you just look at your return over like 2 years, the interest rate you have on your loan will impact what the percentage return is. But if you look at the return over the full length of the loan, the 30-year period or the 15-year period, basically until you pay it off to zero, it is always fixed. The interest rate does not matter at that point. Okay? But if you look at it over a 2-year period, the interest rate actually has an impact. And it goes away after the loan is paid off. So a lot of these other returns, appreciation, in theory, continues indefinitely. Cash flow, in theory, continues indefinitely. Debt paydown, though, it goes away. It goes to zero once you've paid that loan off. You no longer get a return from debt paydown once the loan is gone. Does this make sense, everybody? Okay. Any questions on debt paydown? Awesome. Tax benefits. So the benefits you get from owning real estate, owning rental real estate specifically, I should say, is based on tax law. It is fixed and certain as long as tax law doesn't change. We had a relatively interesting recent election where there were perhaps some tax law changes coming, and I think this was one of the things that was up for consideration as to whether or not they were going to change the depreciation benefit on properties. Okay? So it is possible in the future you could buy a property today thinking I'm going to get this certain benefit from depreciation, and 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 8 years from now, 12, whatever it is, you could actually see a tax law change and you could lose that benefit. Was there anyone who was investing prior to like 1986 or so? Nice. 1986 or so, where they actually had a like a passive loss depreciation benefit thing for high income earners. You had a whole bunch of doctors buying real estate just for their depreciation benefit. Anybody involved in that? Okay, no one. Okay, so they changed that law. And there were a lot of people that were stuck with properties that they wouldn't have otherwise bought unless they were getting these massive tax benefits. Okay, and that changed. So it could possibly change in the future. But until it changes, it's as close to guaranteed as you can get to, because it is based on tax law. You basically get it no matter what. Doesn't matter what the market is doing. So I tend to present it in a raw dollar benefit. So depreciation basically is you take the value of the property itself, not the value of the land. You exclude the value of the land, take the value of the building, and for a residential property, you divide by 27.5 years. So for an example, let's say you bought a $350,000 property. You take off $50,000 of it for the land, you just remove that, and you've got a $300,000 building left. If you divide the $300,000 building divided by 27.5 years, you get what the amount you can deduct on your taxes in depreciation for owning that property. So I'm going to fudge the math a little bit, and I'm going to say it's about $10,000 a year. Okay? So if you basically say 300,000 divided by 27.5, squint really hard, it's about 10K a year. So here's how you actually use that 10K a year. I will show you the 10K part as part of the depreciation benefit, but here's how it really impacts you. Let's say now you earn $100,000 a year, and you're paying taxes on $100,000. How does the depreciation work? What it does is it says, hey, listen, we're going to assume you don't earn $100,000 anymore. We're going to take that $10,000 right off the top, and now you're only going to pay taxes on $90,000. So really, whatever your highest tax rate is, you multiply it by that $10,000, and you can figure out how much extra cash you're going to have in your pocket from not having to pay those taxes. So if you're in a really high tax bracket and your highest tax bracket is 20%, I don't know, what are the tax brackets? Donna, you probably know better than I do. So 20% or so, let's say it's a 20% tax bracket. You take 20% times the 10,000, and you have a $2,000 cash back to you either on your tax return, or you didn't have to pay in $2,000 in taxes throughout the year from owning this rental property. And again, this doesn't matter what cash flow is doing. It doesn't matter if the market's up or down. You get this for 27.5 years. Does that make sense? Okay. So I call it cash flow from depreciation, and it's really whatever your highest tax bracket is times the depreciation benefit. Okay? And again, this one, just like debt paydown, goes away after either 27.5 years, or who knows what 39 years is. Why is there two different dates up there? Commercial property. So 27.5 is residential. It goes away after 39 years if you're buying commercial properties, non-residential buildings. Okay? Does that make sense, everybody? Yes? No? Okay, awesome. All right, so the top half of the return on investment quadrant, what's interesting about those? They are speculative, and uncertain. You're gambling that the market's going to go up and that you're going to get the rent you expect and that rents go up. You're really speculating based on those two items. Okay? It depends on the market. They are volatile. They are harder to predict, but they tend to improve. They tend to compound over time. So that's what's interesting about the top half of the return on investment quadrant. Does that make sense? Okay, what do you think is going to happen next? Yeah, the bottom stuff. So what happens in the bottom stuff? It is more fixed and more certain, okay? If you buy a property and you get a certain loan on it, do you know, what the debt pay down return is going to be? Yeah, if you know what the return is, if you know what loan you got, you can calculate that, and it's not going to vary based on the market going up or down. What about the tax benefits? If you buy a property, do you know what your tax benefits are going to be? Does it matter if the market goes up or down? No. So these are more fixed and certain. They do not rely on market conditions. So the top half does, the bottom half does not. The right side is your cash now side. It's the stuff that produces money in your pocket right away. It tends to produce spendable monthly cash flow, either straight up cash flow, the difference between what you're collecting in rent and what all your expenses are on the property, or in terms of cash flow from depreciation. You basically have this depreciation benefit. It offsets your income. You no longer have to pay taxes on it, or you can get a tax rebate at the end of the year. So in that case, you're basically getting cash flow from depreciation. So the right-hand side of it is either cash flow or cash flow from depreciation. That is the cash now side. I'll give you one guess what the other side is.
Cash later.
Cash later, okay? So, yes, question, we've got a microphone, yeah.
So not to contradict you.
Yes.
At all, but on the tax benefit, you have to be a little bit careful of saying every year it's going to help you, because if you have negative passive losses, I mean, if you're in a passive loss situation,
sure,
depending on your income, you might be limited to that.
Absolutely.
So
there are definitely limitations. There are definitely limitations for depreciation benefit. If you make over a certain amount of money, it goes away unless you are a real estate professional. And so there are certain ways that you can manipulate your situation in order to get that. And there are certain situations where if you make a certain amount of money, it doesn't apply to you. Absolutely. And so you should know that going in, or know what your situation is going to be in order to plan for that. But absolutely, you're right. Yep.
Do you know what that number is?
Nope. Do not. I'm not a tax guy. Maybe one of the tax people knows, but I have no idea. All right, so we're getting back to this. We just talked about cash now. What about cash later? Cash later tends to produce wealth for the future. This is like the bank you can tap into when your property goes up in value and you've paid off the debt in your property. Okay, so over time, your equity from the property going up and the amount you owe going down increases so that you can actually use this money to do whatever you want. You can sell it, you can refinance it, whatever you want to do, and you could use that. But it is not stuff that you can use short term, right? It's not like you're getting this money every month. Make sense? Okay. And then the middle area is where I sum up all of the 4 different areas and I show you what your overall combined return on investment is. So visually, you add up the 4 different quadrants and you sum it up in the middle and it becomes the ROI, okay? Now let's get back to our 2 deals so that I can show you what the returns are for these now that we've gone over them. Was that helpful going over kind of big picture? Okay, awesome. All right, new construction and severance. So I'll just give you some really basic information about the property. Feel free to interrupt if you've got questions. This is a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath, brand new house. We're rolling in all of the extras like AC, backyard landscaping, the fence, garage door opener. What else are we adding in? Stuff, fridge, things like that. So basically everything's included. It is turnkey at the time when you buy it for $350,000. That's the purchase price. So you're all in for $350,000. 20% down payment, and I'm assuming $5,000 in closing costs means you've invested $75,000 total. That's going to be our denominator when we're calculating our return on investment. And by the way, if you want to go into the details of how I do the calculations, there are several other deal analysis classes where we walk you through how to do all those calculations. I am not going to slow it down tonight to do that. There's enough other stuff to cover. But all of the stuff you need to know is in probably 12 other podcasts. Okay? So just go access those if you want them. I'm assuming you're managing it yourself, so you're not hiring a property manager. If you hired a property manager, your cash flow is going to be significantly worse, like $180 to $200 a month worse in most cases. Okay? I'm assuming you have an 8% maintenance reserve coming off the top of your rent, and the reason why it's so low is this is new construction. So for the first year, you have a builder warranty that's going to cover pretty much everything anyway. And then the next year, you're going to have a brand new house that's a year old. So the maintenance on it is going to be really, really low. You're probably going to be accumulating a maintenance reserve for the first few years in that property. Okay? Eventually, it will go back up, right? It's going to go to 10%, maybe 12%, and the longer you own it, it's going to even go up from there. Okay? But for now, I'm saying it's 8% maintenance reserve, and you'd expect it to be low for that first year or two. Any questions on that? This is a house, brand new house in Severance. There is an HOA, and it's all included in that. I'm going to show you in the cash flow numbers. Yep. Okay, so let's take a look at the return on investment quadrant. This is a new construction in Severance, year one in dollars. I'm going to do percentages next, okay? So year one, return on investment, I'm assuming we're making $23,735. Now, before I even get into this, how do I know in advance what the number is going to be? I'm guessing, right? I mean, I'm guessing what the appreciation is going to be. I'm guessing what the rent's going to be in the cash flow. I'm guessing what the debt pay down is, although I can calculate that one pretty quickly. And I'm guessing what the tax benefits are going to be for that, right? So the bottom two, I'm pretty sure on. The top ones, who knows? Total guess. And I'm going to show you that here in a second as well. Okay, so return on investment year one, overall, $23,735. From appreciation. So how much did a $350,000 house go up in year one, according to my math? What do you think I used for my appreciation rate? 3%. Is 3% reasonable? Right? I mean, could the market go down, as Elaine says? Sure, but what has it been doing? A lot more than 3. And I'm going to show you actual numbers. I bought one of these, okay? So 3% is what I speculate that the market is going to do in appreciation in the next year. And so it's $10,500 in return from appreciation. The next one is cash flow. And so the cash flow on this particular property is negative $2,001 for the year. So about 170-ish, somewhere around there, negative per month. And that does include a maintenance reserve, and it does include taxes and insurance and the HOA and the Metro District and all the other stuff that goes along with it, but it's negative $170 a month. What's interesting about taxes on a new construction property? If I buy a property in January, it's brand new, what are taxes for that first year? They're usually the taxes of land, because the assessor usually only reassesses in, when do they reassess, Tam? Do you remember? Is it January every other year? Something like that. So it's January every other year, depending on where you are, this could vary. But basically, if you bought it in January and you buy it after they've assessed, for the full first year, you may have an abnormally low tax bill. So cash flow for year one may actually be positive, because the taxes may be on a $50,000 lot, which might be a couple $100, and the taxes on a new construction property in a Metro District might be $3,000. And so you might have $2,500 that you didn't have to spend on taxes in the first year because you've got this artificial benefit of delayed tax reassessment. Okay? But I assume that taxes started and they were really high from the very beginning. I did not make that assumption. Okay? So just realize that with new construction, that's one of the tricks. And Tam, if you wouldn't mind making a note, make sure I talk about that for the class on the new construction stuff. So I'm not sure it's in my presentation yet. Thank you. All right, so cash flow is negative $2,000. Debt pay down. If you get this loan, you put 20% down, and you got this loan on here, and I think I used 4.625 for the interest rate, because the interest rate does matter since we're only doing 1 year. But basically, you're paying down $4,418 in that first year from debt pay down. Does it matter if the market goes up or down for that? Or what cash flow is? You're getting that no matter what. As long as you make your monthly payments, you're getting that return. Okay? And then tax benefits. Tax benefits are $10,818. Now this one's weird, right? Because this is a benefit of how much income you subtract. It's not really the amount of cash flow you get, because you'd have to take this number and multiply it by whatever your tax rate is. All of these numbers up here are actually pre-tax. Think about it that way. So this $10,818 is how much you subtract from your income. So if we had a $100,000 income, now you're paying taxes on $90,000-ish. Okay? And if you did that, you take this $10,000, you multiply whatever your top tax rate is, because it's reducing the top of your income, and you can figure out what that is. So if you're in the 20% tax bracket, this is about $2,000 a year in cash flow from depreciation, which if it really is in the 20% tax bracket for you, then it really offsets your negative cash flow from your rental property, the cash flow quadrant, right? If you look at just the right-hand side, you have negative 2,000-ish for your cash flow, and you have positive 2,000-ish for your cash flow from depreciation after tax. So really, is this a break-even property or is it negative cash flow? If you're looking at after taxes, it is actually break-even. If you're looking before taxes, it's not. It's negative. Make sense? Yeah, question about if you want to get Mike.
It's real simple. Just what did you assume? Sorry. What did you assume the rent was per month?
Oh boy. It was based on reality, but it was like $18.95 or something like that. Yeah. If you ask me the question, I can go look it up, but I'm pretty sure it was reasonable. It was based on what people were getting for rents. Okay, so yeah, question.
So shouldn't your tax benefit be like $2,000 instead of 10?
You could make an argument that I should actually put in the after-tax number for that, but then I'd have to also adjust all of the other ones, and I need to know what your tax bracket is for doing this analysis. So in order to do it, I just disclosed to you how I did the calculation, and now I'm showing you the numbers and why I'm doing it this way. But you could make a really strong argument for that, and I think I even mentioned that here in a second. Yeah, good question though. So we just did the sheer dollar amounts. Now I'm going to show you percentages, as if you invested $75,000 in year one. So the return on investment for the entire year is 31.6% on this particular deal. Okay? Appreciation was 14%. And remember, we did this math before, and I told you really rough math. You have a house that goes up 3% in value. You put 20% down. You're going to get about 15% return on investment from appreciation. Everyone remember this? So why is it 14? I'll give you a hint. The down payment was not $70,000. I'm sorry, the down payment was not $75,000. Down payment was $70,000. Yeah, so part of it is because I added in the additional closing costs, right? And so that offsets some of your return. So the appreciation is 14% for appreciation. Cash flow is negative 2.7% per year. Debt pay down, you're getting 5.9%. How many people have come to class and heard Brian and I say your debt pay down return on investment for paying off a 30-year loan with 20% down is 5.61%? How many people have heard that? 5.51, you're right, Brian. 5.51, right? You heard this? Okay, so why is it 5.9 here? Because you're only taking into account 1 year. Exactly, so it actually changes year to year, and we're only doing 1 year's worth of debt pay down. The 5.51 is over the entire 30-year duration, okay? And also because of this extra $5,000 in down payment, in the closing costs. Okay, so 5.9%, and then tax benefits is 14.4. To Luca's point, you could make an argument that you should actually multiply this 14.4 times whatever your tax bracket is to get a closer approximation of what the return would be for you. So if you're getting a 20% tax bracket, it should be 0.2 times that 14.4, and so you're getting another 3% or so from there. Does that make sense? So really, you could reduce it by 11 on top, and you're at a 20% ROI overall if you're actually doing it based on after tax for depreciation. Make sense? Okay. So when did 31.6% become a non-deal? Tell me when it became a non-deal. I'm kind of curious. Because this is what our market is right now. And you know, we all came to this class, everyone showed up under the premise, you know, let's do deal alchemy, and how do you actually make non-deals deals? So what's wrong with this? What's wrong with 31.6? What's wrong with 20 if you actually do the after-tax number? Right? So this is a lot of people's cash flow, and I think that's totally right. I think people are obsessed with the one quadrant, the cash flow quadrant. And we're going to talk a lot about that tonight, about how to manipulate it to move stuff to there, and I'm going to show you how to do chunks and everything else, okay? So that's what we're talking about. So now let's do, so we actually, Tammy and I bought this property. We bought, and there's lots of them available. It's not like we stole it from underneath people, but there's a, we went under contract in October of last year. I went and I looked it up. And when we bought it, I'll tell you the number here in a second, but we bought it then, and the market today says that this same property, if we bought it, would be $350. Okay, so I'll show you what the numbers are. So I'll tell you what the numbers are later. I'm going to show you what the return is if we just look at if it was for the last year. So the return on investment over the last year, appreciation is 56.8%. That's what it actually was in the last year. Because we bought it brand new for the retail price, and then a year later, the price that they're selling for is $350. So that is actually a 12.18% appreciation rate for that particular property in that neighborhood. Like same house, same builder, same neighborhood. Like this is as good a comp as you're ever going to get. Brand new house a year later, 11 months later. Okay, so the appreciation return is 56.8. I just kept these other returns the same, negative 2.7, Debt pay down was the same at 5.9, and tax benefits the same at 14.4. So that actually became a 74.5% return on investment for the year. Okay? So we put one under contract in October 2017 for 307, 361, not including about 5K for fence, about 312 for selling, about 312 basically is what the total amount was. You add up the 5K with the 307, and they're selling for 350 right now. That's about 38K growth on 312 investment. That's 12.18% in just less than a year, 11 months. That's what we're seeing in our marketplace. Okay? And anyone could have done this. I mean, there are some clients in this room that have done this actually. Okay. So now we're going to talk about another deal. So we talked about deal 1, now we're going to talk about deal 2. Deal 2 is a resale property in Evans. This one is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath property. It's listed right now for $200,000. If you put 20% down payment and assume the same $5,000 in closing costs, you'd have invested about $45,000 in the deal. I'm assuming you're managing yourself. And this one I've used 12% maintenance. So remember before I used 8% maintenance on a brand new property. This one I used 12% because the HOA fee, it's a half duplex, the HOA fee covers exterior maintenance, but it is an older property that needs maintenance. Okay? So instead of actually using like a really high number, part of it is being offset by the higher HOA. And the HOA is included in the cash flow calculations for later. But right now we're using 12% maintenance because I assume it is a little bit higher, and for that reason that's what we're doing that. Let me get the mic for you.
A question about why you attach that percentage for maintenance to the rent instead of the square footage or number of bedrooms or something?
No real reason except for it's customary for us to analyze deals based on percentage of rent you've got coming in that gets set aside for maintenance. So that's the way we normally think about it. You can adjust it if you're like have a property that is larger square footage. You can say, hey, listen, instead of 12%, we're doing 13, 14, 15% so that it adjusts the number, because you could look at the real dollar amount for it too. But we don't do it based on square footage. And we don't do it based on bedroom. We basically do it based on the rent you have coming in. That's just customary for us and how we've done it forever. I don't have a really good answer for that. She reminds me of a story. So Susie is, cooking the Christmas ham, and she goes and she cuts the top off the ham and puts it in her bowl and starts cooking it and stuff like that. And her husband says to her, hey, so why do you cut the top off the ham when you put it in this bowl? And she's like, I don't know. It's the way that my mother does it. And so I've always done it that way. And she says, oh, well, let's call Mimi and find out why Mimi does this, cuts the top off the ham. So they call Mimi and they say, Mimi, why do you cut the top off the ham before you put it into the pot to cook it? And Mimi says, I have no idea. It's just the way my mother did it, so that's the way I did it. So she's like, well, let's call Grammy and find out why Grammy did it. So they get on the phone, they call Grammy, and they say to Grammy, Grammy, so why do you cut the top off the ham and put it in there before you bake it? And she's like, I don't know why you fools are doing it, but my pot is too small. So it's customary. All right.
How much money did this, I'm sorry, what's the age of this home?
I think it's like, I don't want to guess, but it's probably 20-ish years old, probably around 2000, maybe a little bit earlier, age of the home. It is not in the greatest neighborhood area, which you'd expect, right? If I'm going to show you a cash flow property, do you think it's going to be like an amazing area like Old Town Fort Collins? No, it's not. It's going to be in a rougher neighborhood, a B or C class type neighborhood. I'd say it's probably C plus, B minus if I had to guess, but it's not the greatest neighborhood. There's a storage facility sort of like right up the road. It's on a cul-de-sac. Some of the properties around it have deferred maintenance. It's what you'd expect when you get cash flow properties in our marketplace. I'm going to show you what this looks like.
Is it on wheels?
It is not on wheels. It is half of a duplex. Yep. So it's a straight up house, like a half duplex. All right, so resale in Evans. Let's look at dollars. So your return on investment for year one is going to be $16,058. The appreciation on it, it's a $200,000 property. I've assumed 3% again. So the property value is going up $6,000 over the course of the year. Nothing fancy, okay? $6,000. Cash flow on it, $13.52. It has positive cash flow, a little bit more than $100 a month. I'm surprised no one in here said, I want to make $100 a door per month. That is a really common thing that people tell me when I ask them, what is a deal to you? They'll say to me, I want to make $100 a door. They just pull it out of their butt, and that's what their number is, okay? So there's $100 a door. I was going to tell somebody if they sell me $100 a door, here's your property, okay? Because this one works. Any questions on cash flow? Okay. Debt pay down, you're paying down a much smaller loan. $2,525 is how much you paid down on that loan. And then your tax benefits, again, before taxes is $6,182 there. So your total amount is $16,000 and change for the entire year in this property.
What's rent?
I think I estimated rent at like $13.95.
How many beds is that?
3, 2.
What's your rent?
$13.95. You think that's high? You think I'm low? Okay, so I'm probably low, is what Brian says. I'm right. Part of it's neighborhood. I thought $13.95 seemed like a reasonable number. Tammy, you want to step outside and write a contract? Okay. So, and by the way, that's how you get deals, right? You say, holy crap, I'm going to run outside and write an offer on this right now. So return on investment quadrant. So we're looking at the percentage now on a $45,000 amount invested. So the return on investment is 35.7%. 13.3 was from appreciation. 3.0% was from cash flow. 5.6 was from debt pay down. And 13.7 was from tax benefits. Okay? These are the two deals compared, so you can just quickly glance at them. You'll notice that the Severance deal is 31.6. The Evans one is 35.7. Okay? In sheer dollar amount, though, the dollar amount returns in Severance are much larger because the property is almost 50%. It's actually more than 50% greater. More than 50% greater, right? Yeah. It's hard to do math in front of the room. Really hard to do math. 75% greater, according to Brian. Okay, so you got to see the difference there. Any questions on that before I move on? Do you guys like my slower pace?
Yes. No.
I'm driving Brian crazy. Because Brian and I talk like really fast at each other. It's like pulling teeth for you.
You could start yelling again, too. It would help.
You like when I yell?
Yeah. Can you go on a rant or something?
I can go on a rant. Just give me a minute.
So are you going to talk? I don't know if are you going to talk about any of the subtlety stuff that's in between those two properties? Are you going to talk about the subtleness differences of those two properties?
No, I'm not going to.
Okay.
Do you want to talk about them? I don't even know what you're referring to.
Well, go back a slide. So, I mean, there's all sorts of reasons why people would choose one or the other, right? Then there's a whole bunch of, your appreciation in Evans is probably less likely than the appreciation in Severance based on how you're describing the property in Evans, right? They're not both probably going to end up at 3%. Your cash flow in Evans, like your turnovers are probably going to be a little bit rougher if it's not a great neighborhood. Your debt pay down and your tax benefits are going to stay the same, but those top two numbers, there's a bunch of subtle things in there.
Agreed. And your time. Time too. Yeah, time for a smaller dollar amount. Yeah, absolutely. I think those are all factors. And I'm glad you brought that up because I don't think I was going to cover that, but you're right. That is definitely true. All right, so now we're 10 minutes in. So this is really the class. What if we could move returns around in these different quadrants? Okay, moving returns around the return on investment quadrant from one quadrant to another. As a simple example, how many people have come into the lease option classes where I've been teaching stuff about that? Okay. And as a simple example with a lease option, you could perhaps give up some of your appreciation. You tell the tenant buyer you can buy the property for a fixed amount, so you lose the upside of appreciation. You're basically limiting or lowering your return on appreciation, if you think about it, in exchange for what? Why would you do that? A lot of times it's in exchange in order to improve your cash flow. So we're either getting some money up front that we can use to reduce our money that we need out of pocket, and or the cash flow part of it because we're getting higher than market rent or the very top of the market usually. Okay? So let's take a look at what that might look like. So in this example, with a really simplified version, I'm going to go into a complicated one in a second, we're converting some of the appreciation to the cash flow quadrant. These two stay the same for now. And so you give a tenant buyer the option to buy it from you for a fixed price. You limit or lower the appreciation. In exchange, you get improved cash flow. You move the return from here to here. So you collect a $10K option fee and you increase cash flow by $100 a month and you sell it for 2% appreciation rather than getting 3%. This is what I'm going to show you here in a second for the math. So if you did that, if you actually collected a $10K option fee, you increased cash flow by $100 and you sold it for 2%, then this is what would happen to appreciation. It would go down to 11.4 in the appreciation area, and it would go up to 6.8 for cash flow. So for all of you that are wondering why I tell you lease option deals are one of the two best strategies for investing in our marketplace, this is one of the reasons, is that you guys have told me over and over again that you want this quadrant. And so how do you get more in this quadrant? You manipulate the other quadrants to prove it here. And that's what we're doing with lease options. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So if you collect the $10K option fee, This is 100K to 2%. Okay, here's the more complicated version. So really what happens when you get 10K in an option fee? It does change your debt paydown return, and it does change your tax benefit return. So really, by adjusting this one, doing a lease option, it manipulates more than just cash flow. It changes these too, right? Because you get $10,000 more in option fee. Now your denominator is different, so your return on investment number improves for debt paydown and improves for tax benefits. Actually, if you're getting non-refundable option fee, impacts debt paydown tax benefits as well. And by the way, it is not always a one-to-one type of thing. It's not like you say 1% less in appreciation gives me 1% better in cash flow. Not always. It can definitely change. If you think about the lease option one, you understand why. You might give up more return in your appreciation return in order to get $100 more in cash flow. Does that make sense? So it might not be one-to-one or tit for tat. Okay, so all the previous strategies we've taught in classes, the cash flow explosion class, everything else, all that still applies. It doesn't replace this. Any of the things I'm going to teach you tonight is like a different lens or a different way of looking at what you've already been learning. So go watch all these other classes on nomads and lease options and cash flow explosion. This is really about manipulating the returns and thinking about it in a new way. So like a visual tool for kind of doing it. Does that make sense, everybody? Okay. All right. So these are the examples I'm going to go over in the next 45 minutes. So I'm going to start speeding up. So I'm going to go over an example where we take cash flow and we convert it to better debt paydown. So we're going to lose cash flow and we're going to gain debt paydown. And I'm going to do that by using a 15-year loan example. Instead of using a 30-year loan, I'm going to use 15 years. So I'm going to show you that example. I'm going to tell you how to manipulate all 4 quadrants by going from a 20% down payment to a 25% down payment. Okay? So I'll do that, doing that. And then I'm going to convert debt paydown, paying down the loan, to cash flow by using an interest-only loan or a HELOC. So I'm going to show you how to improve your cash flow quadrant by, instead of using a normal 30-year amortizing loan, I'm going to take the return from debt paydown, I'm going to move it right over to cash-on-cash return. Okay? I'm going to show you the difference between residential versus commercial. I'll manipulate the depreciation period and show you how that works. And then I'm going to show you how to convert cash flow to appreciation, depreciation, and debt paydown by doing nomad and other low down or nothing down options. Basically, when we do those strategies, we put little down, we basically take cash flow, we take a negative cash flow in most cases, and we get significantly improved percentages for appreciation, debt paydown, and the tax benefits. Okay? And then I'm going to show you my black box cash flow model on how to basically make cash flow happen in this marketplace. And then I'm going to show you finally the debt paydown to cash flow model of paying off a loan early. Okay? So 45 minutes. Start the timers. All right, so example number 1. We're basically going to take a cash flow deal and we're going to convert the return we're getting from cash flow by debt paydown. Instead of getting this on the Evans deal, let's say you do a 15-year loan instead of the 30. So the original example we used a 30-year loan. Now I'm going to do a shorter period loan. I'm going to do a 15-year amortized loan. You tend to get a slightly better interest rate when you do these 15-year loans. You go to the bank, you say, listen, I want a 30-year loan. They'll say 4.625. You tell them you want a 15-year loan. They may say to you, you're going to get a, I don't know, 4.5, I think is what I use, but I'll go look it up. Maybe it's actually even better than that. You get worse cash flow, though. Why do you get worse cash flow if you do a 15-year loan? Yeah, your monthly payment goes way up, right? Because you're paying off the entire loan in 15 years instead of 30. So your cash flow gets really ugly. But it's much better debt paydown. And so let's look at the return on investment quadrant. So the loan was 4.625. Now it's 4.125, but it's on a 15-year period. So your interest rate improved. Time period for repayment got squished. Your return on investment was 35.7. Now it's 37.7 overall. Your appreciation number, 13.3. Your cash flow number, your appreciation didn't change, by the way, right? Right? Because it's not manipulated by the loan. This does, though. This went from a 3% cash flow. This was a cash flowing property. Now it's not. Now you're at almost negative 7% per year in cash flow if I switch it to a 15-year loan. Your debt paydown, though, went from 5.6 to a 17.5. So it's significantly improved here. What's interesting about this return? What's interesting about the bottom half? They're guaranteed, as close to the word guaranteed as you can get without being guaranteed, right? Because as long as you make your monthly payments, you're getting that return. And then your tax benefits, 13.7. So you're basically moving from cash flow to debt pay down in this example. Does everyone follow? Simple example, right?
Are those interest rates pretty accurate?
Doug, would you please not take photos of the slides? Thank you.
Are the interest rates pretty accurate for what you think you can get right now?
No, you should go talk to a lender.
A little low, right?
It depends on what you're doing. You're doing owner-occupant? Maybe not. Okay. You know, you're doing R? Maybe not. But, I mean, you can go talk to a lender and find out exactly what they are. But the differential, I think, is reasonable. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So cash flow goes to positive negative $258 per month with 15-year loan. Debt pay down return on investment triples. The overall ROI improves slightly. All right, now we're going to do 3 quadrants and improve cash flow. Instead of putting 20% down payment, you're going to put 25% down. Putting more down, borrowing less means lower payment. Everyone realizes that, right? If you put 25% down, you're borrowing less money, so your payment on that has gone down, which is going to improve cash flow. Plus, what happens when you put 25% down to your interest rate most of the time? Most lenders will give you a slight improvement to your interest rate if you do that. Okay? So, putting more down means slightly better interest rate, which also means better cash flow. A couple months ago, a lender quoted me. I was texting with a lender, with a client looking at properties, and they said to me, the difference between the 20% down and the 25% down was a half point. So if it was quote me 5%, the loan for 25% down was 4.5. That's pretty significant, right? So talk to your lender because it changes all the time. It's unusual for that. Yeah, but it changes all the time. So for this presentation, I only used a 0.125% difference. Okay? Let's look at the return on investment quadrant. So the lower interest rate was 4.65. Now it's 4.5 with 25% down, though. So borrowing less and better interest rate. Your overall return on investment was 35.7. Now it's 37.7, which may be a math error because it looks the same as the last one, which I may not have just corrected. So just someone add them up for me. 10.9 from appreciation. 3.8 from cash flow, so cash flow improves, which is what we'd expect. This goes down because we put more down, but you're getting the same dollar amount. The house is still going up $6,000. That's what we've assumed. But now we have more invested in the deal, so your return on that $6,000 return that you got is actually a lower percentage. Cash flow is 3.8, went up. Debt pay down went from 5.6 to 4.4, and tax benefits went from 13.7 to 11.2. So what is that? 11 and 4.5 is 15 plus 3, 19.
30.3.
30.3. So this is wrong. The 37.7 is wrong. It should be what number? 30.3. Okay. All right. So borrowing less by putting more down changes denominator for fixed returns from appreciation and depreciation, lower returns. Debt pay down, lower because you're putting more down and less is being paid off each month. Does that make sense to everybody? You guys seeing how this works, how we manipulate the quadrants in order to change where the return is going? Okay. Residential versus commercial. Is it better to buy a commercial unit or residential unit if everything else were identical? Everything is identical except tax benefits and depreciation. Residential is 27.5 years. Commercial is 39 years. How big of an impact does this make? Let's take a look. Someone have a question? All right, so depreciation benefits here. So the return was 35.7. Now it's 31.5. Appreciation is 13.3. Doesn't change. Cash flow is 3%. Doesn't change. Debt pay down is 5.6. Does not change. Tax benefits now went from 13.7 to 9.6. So by increasing the duration of your depreciation period, you actually reduce your tax benefits, which would ultimately reduce your cash flow from depreciation. And I think, Luca, this is where I mentioned this. So depreciation went from $6,000 per year to $4,000 per year, about $1,878 less. Multiply that by your highest tax rate to find out how much less cash flow you're receiving if everything else is equal. So this is where you have to multiply by the tax rate. It's not just this raw percentage. This one is sort of like the odd man out in the percentages. Everyone follow me with that? Okay. All right, debt pay down. Anyone have questions on this? This is a really simple example. This is just manipulating whether you're doing commercial or residential. It's one of the downsides of commercial properties, besides the funky loans. So all the guys that want to do like these commercial, industrial type stuff and things like that, it actually has an impact on your returns. All right, debt pay down to cash flow. So how are we going to do this? We're going to use an interest-only loan or a home equity line of credit, a HELOC, on an existing property. So the assumption I made is you have a $300,000 property that is free and clear. You do not have a mortgage on it. Maybe it's the one you're living in, okay? You could borrow the full $200,000 to buy the property in Evans outright. And if you did that, your returns would be infinite because you literally have nothing in the deal. right? You're borrowing the full amount of the money. You're borrowing 100% of the purchase price. So your return on investment is infinite if you do it that way. So because they're infinite and it doesn't make sense to have that discussion any more than this, I'm going to actually assume you had $40,000 lying around somewhere and you put the same $40,000 that you were going to use for your down payment before down and you borrowed the $160 from your HELOC. Okay? So we basically said, I had $40K, I'm going to put that down, I'm going to borrow $160 for my HELOC, and I'm going to use the HELOC instead of a mortgage on that property. So it's HELOCs and interest-only loans are usually interest-only. They don't amortize. So you're not making payments that have payback, right? Part of the payment you're making does not pay down the loan. You're only paying the interest that is due each month. Does everyone follow that? Anyone not follow that? Okay. So you borrow $160 on your HELOC against the $300,000 free and clear property instead of against the Evans property. The HELOC is interest only and at a much higher interest rate. So you could go to a bank and probably get an interest rate around 5% or so today in order to buy an investment property. But the HELOC rates are usually much higher. So I've used 5.75. Okay, so I used a much higher interest rate there. Most HELOCs are also not on 30-year terms, so you have to pay it off. Otherwise, at the end of this thing, you still owe $160,000. Okay? The Evans property is free and clear, and you may be able to do a HELOC on that to purchase your next property. So there's no loan on the Evans property. There's only a loan on the $300,000 property that you lived in. Okay? That's where the money came from. So this one, the one in Evans, is free and clear. You don't have a mortgage on it. And if you can find a lender who will do that, you might be able to actually do a HELOC on that one in the future. Okay, so let's take a look at the returns. So the interest rate was 4.625. Now it's 5.75 for a HELOC, and it's interest only. So the return on investment went from 35.7 to 31.6. The appreciation stays the same. Your cash flow, though, improved. It went from 3% to 4.5%. Why did it do that? No principal payments. So the loan payment itself is lower. Because your debt paydown went from 5.6 to what? 0. You don't get any return anymore from debt paydown because you're not paying down the loan. You're doing an interest-only loan. That's what you're doing. So you don't have any debt paydown return. It went to 0. Now the return basically jumped across to your cash flow return. It got added to your cash flow. You have improved cash flow from doing it. So you want to kind of get better cash flow? This is a strategy. You're trading off one of your cash later returns, one of the ones that's pretty guaranteed, like the fixed one, to a return here that is cash flow. Okay? And it comes at a cost. Tax benefits still the same, 13.7. Okay? Any questions on that? Even with over 1% higher interest rate, this improves cash flow by $671 per year. It's still including the $5,000 in closing costs, which really isn't likely because the HELOC is likely to be less. And you're not required to put $40,000 down anymore because it's the HELOC. You could have put $20,000 down or whatever number you wanted to. There's another really interesting thing that happens with these interest-only HELOC loans. I'm going to cover that here next. Let's talk about amortizing loans versus interest-only. As you pay down on an amortizing loan, does your payment change? Does the amount you pay each month on a 30-year loan, does the payment change? No, right? It's the same payment month 1 as it is month 359. Your payment is exactly the same. Okay? Now the amount that goes to principal and the amount that goes to interest internally to that payment changes. So let's say your payment's $1,000 a month. Early on, it may be $200 is going to principal and $800 is going to interest. Later on, it may be just the opposite. It may be $200 is going to interest and $800 is going to principal. That's what an amortizing loan does. Okay? It shifts from really low principal in the beginning to really high principal at the end because you're paying less interest. There's less balance out. Okay? Now, if you have an interest-only loan and you actually pay down some of the principal, so you borrowed $160,000, you pay it down to $155,000, what happens to your payment? It decreases because you're paying only on the amount of interest that is due on the remaining balance. So if you went from $160 being owed and now you only owe $155, the interest you're paying is on the $155 amount, so your actual payments goes down, which further improves cash flow. Does that make sense? Okay, so as you pay down on amortizing loans, like a 30-year loan, the payment stays the same. If you make extra payments, what does it really do?
Off the end of the loan.
It doesn't technically take payments off the end of the loan. What it does is it moves when you pay off the loan in. Right, so it makes the next payment, really. Basically, if you make a payment, it just takes the principal and reduces it. But it actually moves when the due date, when the loan actually is going to be completely paid off, it moves it in. It doesn't adjust your payment at all, it just moves the date in. So you want to actually move the date in, have it paid off sooner, you make extra principal payments, and it moves it in. Okay, that's what happens when you do that. As you pay down interest-only loans, the payment goes down, your cash flow improves immediately. So this one doesn't adjust where your date is, it just reduces the balance, which reduces your payment. Totally different way that the loans work. Does that make sense? Okay. So when making extra principal payments with amortizing loans, do you want your loan to pay off faster, or do you want your payment to go down? Because there is a way to manipulate this and have a 30-year amortizing loan where your payment goes down. You have a question?
Is that like a
Microphone.
Would the variable keep your rate or your term the same but take your payment down? A variable rate?
A variable rate loan typically adjusts your payments and keeps your payoff period exactly the same.
Okay.
And usually they go up. Okay. So if you want to pay it off sooner, just make principal payments. Just go ahead and make extra payments on it. However, if you want to improve cash flow and reduce your payments while keeping the same original payoff date, you can do something else. It's called recasting. And some lenders will allow you to do what's called recast your loan. And here's sort of how it works. Let's say you had $10,000, a big chunk of money. You're walking down the street, you see a wad of $100 bills because Brian dropped it out of his wallet on the way back from playing poker, and you're like, sweet, $10,000, I'm going to take this $10,000, I'm going to go into my bank, and I'm going to say, Mr. Banker, I have this $10,000 I'd like to pay down my loan with. And he says to you, would you like to just pay down the principal and keep the same payoff, or have the payoff date move in, or would you like us to recast your loan? And by recasting your loan, you basically say, I'm going to pay $10,000 on my loan, I'm going to reduce the amount that I owe, I'm going to keep the payoff date the same, but I'm going to lower my monthly payment slightly. And the rule of thumb, approximately, is for every $10,000 you do, it drops it by about $50. Okay? It's a rule of thumb. Actually, they do a calculation. Now, can you go into your banker and say to them, I've got $20. I would like to apply this to the principal on my loan. I'd like you to reduce my payment. What do you think they're going to say to you? Right, they're going to laugh. So usually they have a minimum, and the minimums are usually around 10K. That's from what I've seen. Okay? So some lenders, if you have $10,000 or more that you're making a lump sum payment to your loan, will allow you to lower your monthly payment and keep the same payoff date. Some lenders charge a small administrative fee for this. Some lenders will tell you you can do this once during a certain period of time, or twice during a certain period of time, or once every X years or whatever it is. So they will limit you depending on the loan program. So ask your lender if you are wanting to do this. You got to find out. Okay? And if you go and you do that, you can either reduce your payment or move your loan payoff period in. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. If you want to improve cash flow in the short term, instead of making extra principal payments in small chunks, like I'm going to throw $100 here, or $500 here, or $1,000 here, you could just save it up until you get to 10K, and then ask your lender to recast your loan for you to improve cash flow short term. Does that make sense? So you could do this instead of actually putting a little bit there. Some people would rather, and Brian would probably argue, some people would rather save up and buy another house instead of actually taking this money and paying off your property. He'd say, just keep that $10,000 aside and keep saving until you have enough for a down payment, and then just buy a whole nother house, because that's probably a better return on your money, which it probably is. So when you pay down a loan, you're getting a return of the interest rates of the loan on that money. So if you have a 5% loan and you prepay, you pay some principal early, you are only getting a 5% return on your money by doing that. Okay, I'm going to show you some math later that suggests otherwise, but I'll show you some other charts that show you the truth. Okay? All right, so how frequent does cash flow need to be? In order for a property to be a cash flowing property, at what frequency does cash flow need to come in for you? Does it need to come in every week? Or does it need to come in daily? Do you need to be able to go and say to your mailbox, oh, I got paid for my rental property today. Oh, I got paid tomorrow. I get paid the next day. Does it have to be daily? No. You tell me. No, it seems unreasonable, right? Okay. What about weekly? Do you need to collect money weekly? Why not? Okay. What about monthly? So it has to be monthly for you? It's just arbitrary, though. I mean, it could have been daily. It could have been weekly. Why monthly? Why is it such a big deal?
It needs to be when you need the cash.
Needs to be when you need the cash? That's a good answer. I don't know. I mean, it's a question for you to answer. Does it have to be monthly for you? I don't know. This is what we typically think of for rentals, though, right? Monthly? What about quarterly? What if you got cash flow quarterly from your rental properties? Is that reasonable? Is that acceptable? This is what we might receive if we were in a partnership, because a partnership's probably not sending out monthly checks, right? The partner doesn't want to even do quarterly. In fact, what if it were yearly? This might also be reasonable for a partnership payout schedule, right? Especially if you have some deferred maintenance on a property. You're saving up for something. You don't know how much it's going to cost. You know, you might say, I'm only paying out once a year. Is that an acceptable thing for you? It's up to you to decide. What if it were every few years? And what if we staggered our investments so that one every few years was paid out? So let me show you what I mean by this. What if you bought an investment, and this is the beginning of the investment, and it's kind of progressing, and here's the end of the investment. And let's say each of these investments takes about 3 years to do. So here's the beginning, year 0, and then here's at the end, year 3. So you have an investment, you do this. A couple months into this investment, though, you buy another one. And so this one takes 3 years as well, kind of is accumulating, running, and this one ends after this one ends, okay? Let's say you do another one. You wait a few more months, you do another deal, and then this one comes out here. You do another one. This one comes out here. You do another one. This one comes out here. What's interesting, though, this one ends before you have to do this next one. So you could use the proceeds from this in order to do the next deal, right? So then you can go do this deal, and do this deal, and do this deal, and so on. So basically, you're staggering your deals so that even though they're taking 3 years, they're really occurring, in this case, like every 3 or 6 months apart. Does that make sense? You're kind of like staggering your investments. So let's talk about this. This is my black box. Did you know this was coming? All right, so here's my black box. So on one side of the black box, you take your initial investment. You invest over here. We'll call it $40,000. So I think that's the number we're going to use. The black box happens. We shake it up 3 years later, and out the other side pops profit. But during this whole black box thing, you're not getting any profit. Okay? It's a black box. You don't know what's going on in there. So you put in $80,000 as an example on this side, and out the other end pops $44,000 plus your $80K back. Okay? So $44,000 profit over 36 months equals about $1,200 a month in cash flow. Does that look interesting?
That's a deal.
That's a deal. This exists in our market. Okay? You want to know what the black box is, though, right? Gnomes. You already know? It's gnomes. So do I even talk about? Yeah, I think I talk about what the deal is. I hope I get to it. So convert appreciation and debt pay down to cash flow. So I'm going to talk about what I think I'm going to talk about what the next deal is. You buy property, you let it appreciate, and I'm using 3% per year, not this crazy 6, 7, 8, 9% year stuff. So you buy a property, you let it appreciate, and you pay down on the loan. Then, toward the end of the 3-year period, you lease option, your lease option tenant buyer buys it from you, or you sell it outright, and you collect that profit. Okay? So instead of $300 per month that maybe you got on a deal if you were lucky, 300 times 12 times 3, or $10,000, 800, perhaps you get instead $44,000 every 3 years, or $11,000 per year between appreciation and debt pay down, and I'm assuming no cash flow on these. So you'd have to go find a tenant buyer who's willing to buy a property where you have break-even cash flow. And if you take into account the depreciation, we can make that break even in most cases, even with the new construction houses. So this is sort of like the black box. You're trading long-term wealth building in this model for chunks of cash. Oh, excuse me, spitting something. So basically, you're saying, hey, I don't want this appreciation or this debt pay down to accumulate in my account like we do with normal rental properties. Instead, I'm saying, move those over from the left side. I want cash flow. And you're getting cash flow over a 3-year period by doing that. Okay? So moving all your returns from appreciation, debt pay down, and since appreciation, your depreciation, you're gonna give back because there's depreciation recapture. So you're really not getting to keep that. It's a temporary benefit you get unless you're doing long-term buy and hold, then you don't have to pay it back, so you're keeping it. You're gonna do that in order to convert it to chunky cash flow, not monthly. All right, so any questions on that model? Does everyone get it? Basically, you do like a lease option deal or something like that. Takes 3 years to mature. You've now converted appreciation and debt pay down to chunks of cash flow. And let's say, here's an interesting thing. So basically, it works out to be $1,200 a month. So I want you to close your eyes for a second and say, how much monthly cash flow do I need? Imagine a monthly number for cash flow. Say, in order to be happy, I need, except for Doug, who needs, quadrillions of dollars for his island. Everyone else is going to name a number like, 5,000, 10,000, 15,000, 25,000, 30,000, whatever your number is. I want that much cash flow. Divide that number by 1,000, and that's how many lease option deals you need to be doing so that staggered, they'll give you the chunky cash flow you need. So if you need $8,000 a month, you need to be doing 8 lease option deals at any given time, and you could start off by doing 1, 6 months later you do the next, 6 months later you do the next, 6 months later. As long as you have 8 that you've got going concurrently at the time when you want your real number, that's how you can think about this. Does that make sense, everybody? Okay. All right, so 2 paths diverged. So I've been thinking about this for a while, but this is a really interesting math problem. So your goals matter as to what you ultimately want to do with your investments. Let's say you have a $100,000 property, you put 20% down, you got a 5% mortgage on it, your payments on that are $429.46 per month. You find $65,073.20 in month 120. You're walking down the street, you look to your left, you're like, what is this? It is $65,073.20. That's what it is. So you just magically come across this money, you pick it up. Now, what do you do with that money? And your goals determine what you're going to do with it. You could, and by the way, Brian would suggest you go buy another 2 houses because you'll get better than the 5% return. I'm going to go here an example, but buy 3 is what Brian says, okay? But if you pay it off in month 20, let's say you just go in there and you say, I've been paying on this loan for 10 years. I'm going to take this random $65,000 I found on the ground. I'm going to actually pay off the remaining balance of my mortgage because that's what you owe on it at this point. You're just going to pay it off, make it free and clear. What happens? You then free up $429.46 in extra cash flow per month for 20 more years. Because you come up with $65,000 and now you no longer have a monthly payment. And by the way, this is just principal and interest. Doesn't include taxes or insurance. Okay? So when you actually come and you pay off $65,000 worth, you no longer have this payment. You converted $65,000 in cash to $429.46 per month in income. Does that make sense? So if you take $429.46, I'm gonna lead you through a math problem that is wrong, but it's a good visual way to think about this. $429.46 times 12 is $5,153.52, which if you divide 51, 53, 52, well, that's pretty interesting. I didn't realize that before. And you divide it by 65,073, which is the amount you put down in your chunk, you get a 7.92% cash-on-cash return for the next 20 years. You get that much extra cash in your pocket by paying off your loan and doing this. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay? Aside, if you wait until year 20, you wait until the loan gets paid down even more, and then you take the amount you need to do that, which is $40,488, then actually you're getting this $429.46 times 12, 51, 53, 52, and you divide by 40,488.65, you get a 12.73% cash-on-cash return on paying off that loan. Okay? Now, I'm going to tell you this is wrong. It's a way to think about it, but it's actually not correct. Okay? Because really all you're saving is your interest rate. That's really the return you're getting on your money. But you do free up this extra cash flow. So if your goal is cash flow now, this is a way to achieve cash flow now. Does that make sense? Okay. You have a better debt service coverage ratio because you no longer have your payment. So if you're trying to qualify for another loan and you are close on that, by paying off this loan, it improves. You have better income also for qualifying for more loans if you do this. So those are some advantages to paying it off. You could then, if you wanted to, you now have a free and clear $100,000 property. If you wanted to go buy something else, you could say, hey, I'm going to go do a HELOC on this $100,000 property, borrow the money, and use that for your down payment. And you only need to have interest-only payments on that part of it, and you can pay that off and improve your cash flow in real time. Okay? So those are some benefits to doing that. If you invest that $65,000 and get 5%, you end up in the exact same spot as if you left the loan in place, as if you paid it off and actually were to, as if you paid it off. So basically, if you can get the same 5% for your loan, you end up in the same place no matter if you pay it off or not. That's the way to think about that. If you take this and you invest it in something else, though, it may be less liquid than if you, it may be more liquid, I should say, than if you actually use it to pay off your house. Paying off houses and having money in equity is an illiquid thing most of the time, because there are times when you cannot get access to that. Okay? There aren't automatically HELOCs every day. There were times when money tightened up and HELOCs were not readily available. So if you have it all in your house in equity, it may not be as easily accessible. So liquidity is an issue here, whether you keep it in cash or don't keep it in cash. Would you do the mic for Elaine? Is it on?
Yeah, we had several HELOCs in place, and the bank did not tell us that the interest rate went up on them. We found that out.
Yeah, they're variable. They're adjustable rate interest. Yep, that happens definitely. Okay, so your goals matter in what you want to do. Your net worth, though, is identical whether you decide to pay off the loan and don't invest in something else because you can't, or if you actually take, if you pay off the loan and you take that extra $400 and you invest it in something at 5%, or you take the big chunk of money and you invest it at 5%, in either case, you end up in the same exact spot from a net worth perspective. If you're getting more than 5% with your other investment, that's $65,000, then obviously it improves. But your true cash flow differs considerably, because you then have this cash flow bump here if you pay off the house that you didn't have before. And that's the big difference. So you got to do something productive with this, or if this is your goal to retire and be able to live off this cash flow, then that's a choice you make. Okay? Any questions? Would you, Mike? I think Mike has it.
In the example of the black box, or even if you kind of put that in terms of the Severance or Evans deal,
yep,
and you're looking at not doing a lease option, but say selling in 3 years,
yep,
how much do real estate commissions affect that ROI percentage that was really good on your chart?
A huge amount, because if you're doing a real estate commission, let's say it's $350 now, it's going up 3% a year, that's $10K a year, so it's like $380. So what's 6% of $380? What's 6% of 380? Where are my real estate agents? What's 3% of 380? Every real estate agent can multiply by 3%. What is it? What's the number? Where are my agents? No agents can multiply by 3%? That's crazy. I've never seen that before. I'm up in front of the room. I can't do math up here. What is it? What's that number? 14.4, right? 11? No, it's more than that. Isn't it? So it's 11.4. So it's $22,000. So half. Half of it would go to the real estate agent if you decided to sell it with an agent. So don't sell it with an agent. Think ahead. Actually go ahead and do a lease option exit and get out of it without paying agent commissions. That's a better way to do it anyway. You get better rent. You get an option fee up front. You get more protection for your tenant. Like you have more protection if they just do something to the house because you got an option fee instead of a straight just normal like a security deposit. So there's lots of reasons why you'd want to actually do the lease option rather than do a straight rental and then sell it with an agent anyway. So I think that's a much better strategy. That's a good question, though, because it does eat into it. If you were going to have an agent sell that house, totally eats into your profit. And every client who I've ever sold a house for, at least I hope I have, I've talked to them, hey, listen, have you considered lease optioning instead of actually using me? I'll sell your house for you. I'm happy to do it, but it's not free to you like it is when you buy a house with me. It costs you a commission to do that. And I would rather you do lease options to exit out of the properties and save yourself the money. Because I think that, I mean, I'd rather see you have $22,000 more in your pocket. So if you're willing to do that, that's great. You save your money. So just plan ahead. And I think it's better anyway to have the tenant buyer in there. You get an option fee instead of a security deposit. You get probably a little premium on rent. I mean, they're going to take care of it like they're an owner rather than they're a tenant. I mean, there's all sorts of compelling reasons to do that. So, yeah. Any other questions? Do you guys like my slower pace? I tried really hard. Fewer slides, more storytelling.
I have a question about...
Told you my ham. Would you get the mic, please? I told you my ham story. All sorts of good reasons. Is it on?
I just had a question. I was running calculations last night, and I didn't know when you do the tax benefit, when you depreciate a property, is that strictly off the purchase price, or does that go off the assessor's value? Does that increase over the years, or do you only use the original purchase price for that?
It's original purchase price only. Whether it goes off of assessed value or purchase price, you should talk to your CPA, because I think CPAs have different opinions on how that works, and they also have different opinions on how they calculate land value. So it's not as easy as just this is automatically the rule. I tend to use about 15% of the value of the property as a really rough rule of thumb. And if you're out in the field and you're looking at properties and you're trying to figure out approximately what your depreciation benefit will be, just turn to your agent and say, hey, what's 3% of this property? And that's about what it works out to be. And your agent always knows how to do the 3% calculation for other reasons. But if it's a $300,000 property, if you say, hey, listen, this $300,000 property, it's going to be over 27 and a half years, and part of it's going to be value of land, 3% works out to be about $9,000 on that, which is pretty close. If you think about the example we did, what did we do for the, what was the severance property depreciation benefit? Because you could figure out what the commission was on that, and we'll just compare them quick. But it's a really good estimate. Let's see here. So $10,818. And that's actually doing, I think, 15% for land and then dividing it by 27 and a half. What's 3% of 350,000? Where are my agents? It is not. It's 10,500. It's 10,500. So it's off by $300. That's close enough. So if you're in the field and you want to know kind of like approximately what's my depreciation benefit, it's really easy to just multiply the actual value of the property by 3% to figure out what that is. Does that help you guys? Sometimes I can. I mean, sometimes you can't. I mean, I can't do, what number did I do? 480? 380, yeah. What's 380? I don't know. Less than 12K. Well, I mean, it was less than 12K because I just did 3% times 400. That's how I knew that. Yeah, exactly. Close enough. Close enough to 3%. Was that helpful? Kind of that crazy deal manipulation class, deal alchemy? And did you, now that you know that this is not a deal-less market, does that change the way you look at things? Anyone else still fixated on cash flow quadrant, this one up here? Like everybody? I know, it's crazy. I mean, that's what everybody wants, but.
Well, you can't live on appreciation.
You cannot eat depreciation. You cannot eat appreciation. You cannot eat debt pay down unless you're doing black box. If you're doing black box, then you totally can eat it, right? You're basically converting it over a 3-year period. It becomes very chunky, but it's not cash flow monthly. The tax benefits of doing it? Yeah, I mean, the depreciation short term? Sure. You do get recapture though. If you do the chunky plan where you're doing black box and 3 years later you sell the property, they're gonna want that money back. Yeah. So they're gonna get theirs back, the government, by doing depreciation recapture.
So that portion was perfect because we had a.
You have the mic.
That portion was perfect for me. We had a conversation the other day about what I was looking for out of investments, and what I was trying to explain, I guess, was that I'm kind of in the growth phase. I'm trying to build the portfolio, and so I need cash flow. And I guess I hadn't considered necessarily that.
Pops. Black box.
Yeah, you know, if I wait 3 years on a couple properties, there's enough cash flow in that to buy another property. I just don't have to collect it $100 a month.
And is 3 years an exact number when you're doing lease options like this? No, but could you go and, you know, for sale by owner it in 3 years or do something like that? Sure. I mean, so if your tenant buyer doesn't cash you out after 3 years, you can say, okay, I'm going to for sale by owner it, or say, hey, the property's gone up more than 3%. I'm actually going to put another tenant buyer in there, and I can defer my cash flow need for a little while later. Do more than you need, right? If you only need $8,000, maybe you do 10 of these, you know, to have that, or maybe you only need $5,000, so you do 8 of them, or whatever it is. But you can do that to kind of accommodate for these delays and stuff like that. So. All right, any further questions? Awesome. Please stick around for the class after the class, do some networking. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it. I will see you all next week. Thank you. You're very welcome.